Hey guys, it's Brady Marshall here with the Real Estate Hour, and Leon Brady could not join us today, but we do have a special guest for you. Right now, we are sitting here with our very own John Barnes, lawyer and mediator, and he goes by just John. Okay, he just told me that. I thought that was hilarious. But anyway, I want to just welcome you to our show, and thank you for coming on, and we are going to just dive right in for the sake of time. I had a few questions for you, and
Sure.
I'd like to know what got you started in law.
Oh, I'm not real sure. I've been
Okay.
practicing so long now, I've forgotten a lot of it. I was just fascinated by the law, and I didn't go to law school right out of college.
Okay.
I had another life or two in there, and then I was in a position where I knew if I didn't go then, I likely never would go, so I just made the commitment.
Right.
Went to the University of Houston Law Center,
Okay.
and then I practiced and taught law in Houston for several years, and then I returned home to Fort Worth about 2001.
Okay.
And I've been here since, and my practice centers around estate planning and probate. So very important in making major financial decisions like buying a house, that people be prepared for that, and I fear that most are not.
Right, and guess what? That's exactly why we want to talk to you today, because we want to educate people on the importance of a will. So I know that we've had personal experiences in real estate, or anyone that's in real estate may have had a personal experience with someone who didn't have a will. So I just wanted to see if you could touch a little bit on the importance of a will and what you see on your side as a lawyer.
All right. Thank you. I'd like to talk about it. I'd like to start with something I call the first line of defense, and that is either a will or a revocable family trust. Two different documents, but they do the same thing.
Okay.
The second part of that first line of defense is a medical power of attorney, in which a person authorizes someone to make medical decisions on their behalf if they become incapable of making their own. They're in a coma, for example, might cause that. And the third is a durable general power of attorney, which authorizes someone to, if this person is incapacitated or out of the country, and powers of attorney are very flexible, but it authorizes that person to pay the insurance on the house and cars, keep the lights on, and
Right.
those financial matters that are important. So those three are the foundation for effective planning for the future.
Okay.
But turning now to the will or the family trust, if there's something afoot, and I mentioned to you earlier that I talk about this from time to time in different groups, and in the question and answer session, something that people are saying to me that dismays me is, I don't need a will because my wife and I are married and Texas is a community property state.
Right.
Well, those are all true statements, perhaps, but they don't work together. The concept of community property applies more in family court. It comes into play more in divorce. It doesn't come into play much in the probate of matters at all. So yes, the parties own that house, most of them, own it in equal shares, but that party, if one of the partners dies, then the court has to transfer that other property over through a will, or the revocable trust can be set up.
Right.
But if you don't name someone, then you get into this system in Texas probate law called rules of intestacy. And that means your heirs get it. You don't have any say in it. Your heirs don't have any say in it. The probate court is going to give this, this, and this. For example, if a couple, maybe one spouse dies and then the other one dies, they haven't done anything, they have 3 kids, the court is going to give those 3 kids the house.
Everything.
Or
everything. Assets.
Yeah.
Right.
But each kid is going to get a third of everything the parents have.
Okay.
Well, how are you going to divide a house into 3 parts so the kids can sell it?
Right.
You can't.
Right.
So there are all these battles, and lawyers make a lot of money because people don't plan in advance.
So have you ever seen a situation where there have been children and then there's a parent that's left and the children and the parent are battling?
Yes. Yes. And there's no good outcome
Right.
to that. The key is prevention of the problem in the first place.
Right.
And I suspect everybody watching today and everybody in this room is a big believer in preventative medicine.
Right, right,
Why do we not believe in preventative law?
right,
Because if we did that, all these problems would disappear.
right.
And people would have a much easier time getting through stressful times. So many, probate is about grief.
Right.
Somebody's died. Somebody's unhappy.
Right.
And so if people do the prior planning, I've reached a point where I'm calling that safe grief. Because if I've lost a parent, the last thing I need to be worrying about is the paperwork.
Right.
And so I have all my paperwork in place now. So if anybody's going to grieve, they're free to grieve without worrying about what's happening financially or with my house or my car or anything else. It's all done in advance. And ironically, when it's all done in advance, it is 2 to 3 times cheaper than when it's not, because you're in court a lot longer, and court's a very expensive place to be.
Right.
Anybody who's been through a divorce is well aware of that. Well, it's no cheaper in probate than it is in a divorce court. So that's a big issue.
So what is the process? Like, if people that are out there listening, they know that they want to do that, or now that they're hearing this conversation and they're feeling like they can relate to it, what would be the first steps that they would need to take in order to start moving towards getting some of these preventative measures in?
Find a lawyer.
Okay.
I am available. But it is essential, and let's go back. You have family doctors?
Yes.
I bet everybody out there has family doctors. Do you have a family lawyer?
No.
No.
See, and we don't have that. And when I taught law, I always taught my students, get people to get comfortable with the idea of having a family lawyer in the same sense you have a family doctor.
Right.
Somebody you can call, and most of the time it will be simple. You call me and say, well, I've got this, and I say, well, do this. It's sort of like take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. Most of the time a simple call will fix it.
Right.
But on those special occasions where it won't, and you call me with something like an intellectual property law issue, that's not my area. But I'm not going to abandon you. I'm active in the bar. I know some very good intellectual property attorneys, and I'll send you to one of them.
Right.
Just as your family doctor would send you to a specialist for some medical need.
Right.
And so that to have the right relationship, it's with a person. Because when people come in to see me, I ask 20 times more questions of them than they ask of me. Because until I know something about the people, I can't just prescribe something.
Right.
I don't know what your goals are. I don't know anything. So I've got to ask a lot of questions. And that's a problem. I'm a big believer in the World Wide Web. I surf it every day for something. But it's a very risky place to seek legal advice.
Right.
Because they don't know, well, there's really no relationship with the lawyer. The lawyer may have drafted a document that you buy, but it wasn't drafted for you.
Right.
It was drafted for the public at large. And that's especially dangerous in probate law if you live in Texas, because Texas probate law does some very wonderful things that other states don't allow. So if you're buying it online, you gotta be sure you're buying it for Texas. Or you're just throwing money down the toilet, and that's never a good idea to me.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Sure.
So people are going to get a will. Is it ever too early in the home buying process to get a will?
We're all gonna die,
Right.
so it's not if, it's when.
Right.
And no, it's never too early. A lot of people, though, when I start talking to them about this, they act like I'm asking them to sit down and carve their tombstone. And that's not it at all. We know we're going to die. The question is, are we going to plan for it, or are we just going to let it scatter to the winds? And that's the big difference.
Don't let it scatter to the wind.
Hey
Well-
guys, this is Jeff. He
Oh,
just
yeah.
hopped on with us.
I'm the camera guy.
So it's never too early to have that. And it's especially important, and many people don't realize this. Parents don't think of their 18-year-old children as adults as a general rule, right? The law does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when that child turns 18, the parents can no longer make medical decisions for them.
Mm-hmm.
And parents are stunned to learn that, but that's the law. So the moment somebody turns 18, they need to have a medical power of attorney, and if they have any bills at all, if they have a car that needs to make payments made, they need to have a durable general. And these are not expensive documents. If you're paying $250 for both of them, you're paying too much.
Gotcha.
So I'm not talking about thousands upon thousands of dollars. But again, you need to talk to an attorney who does that kind of work.
Right.
And so they can ask you the kinds of questions, so they'll know exactly what to create that will fit your needs, and not just some theoretical person out there in the universe.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think that most people think that it's too expensive. Like they're intimidated by the cost of it instead of just actually going and doing the research and then actually talking to somebody, then figuring out how much it costs and then working from there.
Right.
And you can amend it too, right?
Hmm?
Like you can amend the will, like
Very good question.
buy a house.
When you write these documents, they are not cast in stone. I tell people every federal election, get your documents out and look at them. So that means every 2 years, pull them up. If they still work, fine, put them back. But if something's happened and you didn't think about your paperwork at that time, then, I've got to change this.
Right.
And the way I set documents, well, some of them, a will must be completely redone. And a revocable family trust, there are lots of good things about that. I switched that for myself about 10 years ago. They're much more flexible. They're a little more expensive on the front end, but you don't go to probate court. You bypass probate court with trust. And so it may cost you a little bit more to get one set up, but then there's no more expense.
Yeah.
And right now, I would think you would pay a retainer of at least $3,000 in Tarrant County for a probate attorney who knows what to do in probate court.
Gotcha.
You might get some cheaper ones, but get back to that old adage, you get what you pay for. So that may be a circumstance of that, but they can be changed.
Gotcha. Okay. That's some good stuff.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between a will and a trust?
Good question. The will is old. The wills have been around a very long time. And that brings up something else that I wanted to mention today, and that is there's another misunderstanding that people, when they write the will, that when that person dies, it's just going to happen.
Right.
Well, no, it has to go to the probate court.
Yeah.
And somebody, the will will name somebody as the executor. And that person's responsibility is to distribute the property of the person who died exactly as the will told them to distribute it. Okay, well that means you've got to go to the courthouse.
Gotcha.
And the judge is going to have to approve you. And then there's something else that with the will, the attorney will file something called the inventory of the estate. Excuse me. And that is a list of what the person who died owned at the moment of death.
Right.
And that is a public record, and that means anybody who wants to pay, in Tarrant County, anybody who wants to pay 50 cents a page can go get a copy.
Gotcha.
And many people don't think that's anybody's business, me among them. I don't see the relevance in that happening. Then you have to do a few other things, but it's about a 6-month process,
Gotcha.
depending on how busy the courts are. But it can be a lot shorter, it can be somewhat longer. And actually, I had a probate case. This is going to be hard to believe for most people. The will wasn't done properly. It was a substantial estate, more than $2 million in it. And that dispute lasted 19 years.
Wow.
That's great.
Started in probate court in Harris County, Texas, Houston. And I moved back to Fort Worth. I was still having to go to Houston periodically to take care of it. And that's what happens without good prior planning. Now that's a very rare example, I get it. But we went through 3 probate judges trying to get that case right. So that's what happens if you don't have good planning.
Gotcha.
So the trust tries to avoid all that issue with the probate court. So if it's done right and the parties keep it up, then let's say it's a married couple. They bought this house, they buy the house in the name of the trust. And lenders are used to that. That's not going to upset any lender.
Right.
And so they buy it in the name of the trust. And then in the trust, it will say that they are the settlers and trustees. So they're free to live in that house as long as one of them is alive. And then on the death of the second spouse, the successor trustee will do whatever the husband and wife wanted, the kid usually is the person, will do what the trust says to do. Typically that's either, let your poor brother live in that house, because otherwise he'd be living on the street. Right? But more
Yes, everybody has one of those.
more typically, they're going to say sell the house, and you kids distribute the money evenly, and But it's done without going to probate court.
Yeah.
So nobody knows what was in the estate.
Right.
Nobody has to go to the courthouse and cry.
Right.
I mean, it's a much smoother process to have a revocable family trust. Now, I keep saying revocable because there are irrevocable trusts as well, and that is a completely different subject from what we're talking about, trying to protect couples' houses.
Okay.
And typically, the irrevocable trust you're going to see used by people in the multimillionaire range.
Gotcha.
But the average working class folk are just trying to get by and keep things intact.
Gotcha. I'm taking in so much information.
I know.
There's a lot of people I need to call today to tell them to watch this show.
Right?
Well, and that's true, because I've seen surveys, people are always surveying something. And that's interesting too. I'll get back to that, but I just read a survey that showed 68% of the general public, and it was some legal group who did this, 68% don't want to meet the lawyer in the lawyer's office. They want to meet him in a coffee shop, they want the lawyer to come to their house, or they don't want to come to the lawyer's office. I'm fine with that. Because with estate planning, of course, many of the people I talk to are advanced in years and they don't get around as well as they used to. But there's another advantage from meeting in people's houses. I'll give you an example. There was a lady whose husband was dead. Her health was failing. Her mobility was limited. And I was talking to her son. I said, why don't I come to her house? You and your sister meet me there. So that's what we did. And I was looking at the house, and she told me about, she had 4 children, 2 of them were there, 2 lived in other states. But there's this picture of this young woman on the map, and it wasn't one of her kids. So I said, well, who is that? She said, oh, that's my niece, she's like my own. I said, did you put her in the paperwork? No. Now, I wouldn't have known that. So she got her the paperwork, and I'm sure that young lady is very happy that I saw her picture on the mantle, the substantial estate we're talking about. But that's the advantage of going, when a client comes to me, I can tell you what they told me and what they were wearing and what they look like.
Right.
But I have to pull some of those answers out. And when people are in their home, I think they're more relaxed.
Right.
And I think that's why this substantial numbers, no, we don't even go to the lawyer's office.
Yeah.
So that's why more and more lawyers, and I'm reading more and more family lawyers say, I'm going to go to people's house. I want to see where they live.
Yeah.
So maybe it's time to go back and have house calls for doctors and lawyers, and maybe dentists someday for routine examination. I don't know.
Well, I think too, another thing with that is that we live in such a convenience world now that everyone wants everything at the tip of their fingertips, whether it's press a button, you come to me, I don't have to do as much, but I do think that is an advantage when you're able to go inside that person's environment and kind of see other things that you wouldn't have known, or to even give you clues about who they are if you hadn't went there. So I do think that that's a good idea, but I think we definitely, even like the, what's the new thing everybody's doing, the DoorDash, where they order the food and,
yes.
from the restaurants now. You don't even have to go to the restaurant. They'll just bring it straight to you. It used to be just Domino's and any type of pizza place that would do that, but now you can get practically anything at your fingertips. So.
And a realtor, because we will come to your house.
Oh yeah, we'll come to your house too. We definitely will.
Well, you would expect the realtors to.
Yeah. So, is there, do you have like a website, or how would people get in contact with you if they are looking for these services, or even, do you offer consultations of some sort that people can kind of get this information and even just get started?
I do offer initial consultations at no fee, because I don't want there to be money involved in our first conversation. I just want to get to know somebody, find out what their needs are, because sometimes maybe it would be inappropriate for me to help them.
Right.
And maybe I don't like them, I don't like their money.
Right.
And if I've taken money from somebody I don't like, I really don't give it back. But seriously, I do initial consultations for free, just to see what the situation is and then try and give some initial guidance, and then we'll see where to go from there. The phone number is 817-298-2196, and then my website is johnbarnesattorney.com. JOHNBARNES.
I think you're sitting on John's card. I was gonna put that up to the camera so that we can kind of see it. So we're gonna put your phone number here.
Oh, thank you.
John, so that they can see. We'll leave your information in the comment section as well, so that anyone that is looking for any of this information, they can reach out to you. So when we get to the end of our segment, we always ask all of our special guests a question.
All right.
And our question is, what's a fun fact about you that other people don't know? Like if you know it, if we that we don't know actually, because we don't know.
I used to live on my sailboat.
What? That's a good one.
Yeah.
How long did you live on the sailboat?
About 7 years.
Are you serious?
I was teaching at South Texas College of Law in Houston, and my boat was harbored at Portofino Harbor, which is a quarter-mile off Galveston Bay at the Clear Creek Channel.
Huh.
And it was great fun to come home from work, cast the line, sail out in the bay, and maybe cook a shark steak on the grill, watch the bats. And until you've been out on Galveston Bay at night, you're just unaware of how many bats there are.
Really?
And that's wonderful because their favorite food is mosquitoes.
Yeah.
But someday I plan to return to living aboard a boat somewhere.
Oh my God.
Maybe the South Pacific.
Oh my God. Well, that is absolutely a fun fact. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for coming on. If you have any questions for John, please leave them in the comment section. We'll leave his information there. And we will see you guys next Tuesday at 12 o'clock.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.